Hello and welcome to Tech Deals, unboxing and overview of the 750 watt Seasonic 80 Plus titanium power supply. This is a premium top tier power supply, and in this video I'm going to briefly talk about who should consider it, who probably shouldn't and should look at something less expensive, and then I'm going to take it out of the box and show you what comes in the box. Now, a separate review and installation of this into a computer in a build is going to be covered in a separate video, but I'm taking it out of the box and I'm talking about it in general terms in this video. So first up, 80 plus titanium. What does that even mean? Well, the 80 plus is actually a certification standard for the efficiency of power supplies. There's 80 plus white, and then bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and then titanium. This is actually going to be the very first titanium power supply that I've ever reviewed. I've looked at some 80 plus platinum power supplies and a whole bunch of gold and bronze power supplies in the past. Up to 96% power efficiency if you are in a part of the world which uses 220 volts, and up to 94% power efficiency in the United States and the few other countries that are on 110. Compare that to the 80 to 85% power efficiency for the 80 plus white and 80 plus bronze, which admittedly are less expensive and more common, but certainly consume more power. Now, from a real world point of view, how much power are we talking about? Well, for 100 watts of power consumption that your computer requires, at 96% efficiency, this will pull an additional 4 watts of power from the wall, roughly. So you're looking at 104 watts of power from the wall for every 100 watts your computer uses. Now, speaking of which, that's a common misconception. Many people think that a 750 watt power supply can only pull 750 watts from the wall. No, a 750 watt power supply can provide 750 watts to the internal components of your computer. It will pull more than that from the wall. How much more? Well, that depends upon the efficiency of the power supply, and the efficiency does change depending upon the load. Very low loads, such as in sleep mode, and very high loads right to the top level of the power supply's consumption ability drop in efficiency. It's a bell curve. Right around 50% power consumption, or in this case 375 watts, is where it's going to hit that 94 or 96% efficiency rating. Any more or less than that, and it's going to dip down. But on this unit, not much below 90%. It's still very efficient on both ends of the power supply curve, which is not true for all power supplies. Some of them dip very, very low. The only requirement for the 80 plus rating is at the 20%, 50%, and 80% power consumption usage points. Above, in between, and below those numbers, there's no requirement that it have any efficiency rating at all. This unit is better than average. Now, obviously, it's still not going to be as efficient at 20% than it is at 50, but it still maintains about 90% efficiency even at the 20 and 80% numbers. I realize I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you, but it's worth noting that if you live in an area where you pay a lot for power, if you live in, for example, Hawaii or Germany or some places in Scandinavia where power is 30 to 40 cents per kilowatt hour, then a more efficient power supply over the 10 plus years you may use it might very well pay for itself. Now, I did say 10 years, and that's an important point. There's no need to replace your power supply each time you upgrade your machine. This has a 12-year warranty. You should absolutely be able to keep it for 12 years. And as far as Seasonic, Seasonic was incorporated in September of 1975. So it's actually a little bit older than I am. So they've been around for a very long time, and they've been selling retail for about 20 years or so. They've been providing power supplies to OEMs, large companies, HP, Compaq, etc., as well as standalone power supplies and white label to many of the big brands that you've heard of. No, a lot of those big names that you buy power supplies don't actually make units. Companies such as Seasonic actually are providers of power supplies to the more well-known name brands. Seasonic is actually one of the largest power supply companies in the world, and they make everything from very low-end to very high-end premium power supplies. So if you're concerned about the warranty and whether or not they make good stuff, they do. They've been making power supplies longer than most of the other companies have existed. Now, coming back to the power efficiency for a minute. If you live in a place where power costs less money, I live in Texas, for example. We pay 10 cents per kilowatt hour. So the benefits of a super efficient power supply from a strictly dollars ratio may not make sense. They make this same power supply in a gold efficiency for $50 less. Now, the gold power supply is going to be less efficient than this. How much so? Oh, about 5%, give or take. So for each 100 watts the power supply needs, the gold version will pull about 5 more watts from the wall than this will. Is 5 watts a lot? No, not really. Even if you have your computer on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even if you're doing active things a lot of the time, 5 watts per 100 watts is still pretty minor if you're paying 10 cents per kilowatt hour. If I lived in Hawaii and paid 39 cents per kilowatt hour, absolutely, this would make complete sense. Over the course of 10 years of using it, it'll pay for itself at their power rates. So it just depends upon what you pay for power. Now, another factor to consider is how much do you want to benefit the environment? If you're concerned about that, if you want to reduce your overall footprint and power consumption, then it might be worth buying a more efficient unit, even at a bit more money, simply to reduce your overall power consumption and your power draw. That also applies, by the way, if you live in an area of tiered power. For example, if you get your first 1,000 or 2,000 kilowatt hours for less money, and then your price jumps up in tiers. I know in California, in some places, they have as many as 4 tiers of power, so the more you consume, the more you pay. In that case, if you're near that limit, it might make sense to buy a more efficient unit to reduce your power consumption. Now, a word on power consumption. You may add up all the parts in your computer. Maybe you have a GTX 1080 Ti graphics card with a 250 watt TDP power rating. You might have a Ryzen 7 1700X with a 95 watt power rating, or maybe even one of the upcoming Intel i9 CPUs or Threadripper CPUs in the 140 to 165 watt TDP rating. Does that mean that your computer pulls that much power all the time? No, of course not. The only time your computer pulls the max power consumption of all those parts is when it's fully and actively being utilized. Now, if you have a Ryzen 7 and a 1080 Ti and you're playing Ghost Recon Wildlands, yes, your computer is pulling a lot of power and it will get very, very warm. But if it's in sleep mode, or if you're just browsing the web and you're not doing that much, you might be surprised how little your computer is actually pulling. That aforementioned computer, 1080 Ti with a Ryzen 7 processor, the entire machine might very well pull 100 watts or less when you're just in Windows. And it may very well pull 30 to 40 watts in sleep mode, and of course it doesn't pull anything when it's turned off or hibernated. Now, while the efficiency of this and all power supplies is lower in sleep mode, keep in mind that even if it's only 80% efficient at 30 watts, the percentage difference there is so minor as it's not a huge deal. What we care about is how efficient is it when we're pulling 400 or 500 watts because of our super fast processor and super fast graphics card. That's when it makes the difference. So if you use your computer 2 hours a day and it's off all the rest of the time, then you have to keep in mind that you're only getting that great efficiency and saving that power consumption from the wall during that 2 hours of use. On the other hand, do you work with your computer? Do you use it 8 hours a day, 5 days a week? Does your computer do Ethereum or Bitcoin mining? If you're interested in those type of activities, which can easily be 24/7 activities. Do you do content creation, video encoding, video rendering for YouTube, such as what I do? Oftentimes I'll sit down, set up a bunch of videos, click render, and then leave. I make my videos at 4K resolution. My game performance videos are 4K 60 frame per second videos at 50 megabits per second. It takes a lot of encoding time to make all the videos I upload. That power consumption adds up over time. Now, what I pay for power, it's marginal as to what the difference would be. But as I said before, if I lived where power cost more, I would have one of these in each of my high-end computers. All of my Ryzen 7, all of my i7 and i9 machines would definitely have efficient power supplies. Because over 10 or 12 years of ownership, it really adds up over time. Plus, planet Earth, well, thank you. One more point I'd like to make before we open this up and take a look at what's inside the box. How much should you spend on a power supply and what kind of computer would I put this in? In general, I don't like to spend more than about 10% of my computer's budget on the power supply. Sometimes less depending upon what the machine is, but 10% is about my limit. At $170 for this, that would equate to about a $1,700 machine. A Ryzen 7 1700X-based computer or an i7 7700K computer with a GTX 1080 or 1080 Ti or possibly multiple graphics cards, lots of RAM, lots of hard drives and storage, and an intense high-end machine, probably liquid cooled or at least with a super high-end tower cooler. The reason for that is because that's the only kind of computer that really benefits from the high power draw, high efficiency rating of a power supply such as this. That's also the kind of computer that's likely to be heavily overclocked, and overclocking is an important topic. Power supplies such as this provide 750 watts, but you can get a 750 watt power supply for half the price. But those power supplies tend to have lower quality power delivery components. If you are looking to overclock, say, an i7 7700K to 5 gigahertz or beyond, if you want to overclock a Ryzen 7 chip to 4 gigahertz or beyond fixed on all cores, and you got a big liquid cooler or a big tower cooler, you want high quality electricity delivery. Not all power supplies are created equal, and how smooth and consistent the power supply can deliver power to your motherboard, your graphics card, the voltage regulator modules on your motherboard might determine how well you can overclock. If you've ever wondered why some people get great overclocks and some people don't, well, part of that is in the quality of the chip, the silicon lottery, so to speak. A higher quality chip is going to give you a better overclock. But you can have the best chip, the best golden sampled, highest overclocking chip in the world. But if you put it on a bronze rated 750 watt power supply for $70, yeah, you save some money, but you might get less overclocking because that power supply is not going to have the premium solid state power delivery components of something like this. Now you are paying a premium to get it, which is why I would only put this in $1,500 plus machines, and really $2,000 is probably the place for it. All top tier components, overclocked, mid-tower or full-size tower cases, that's where this belongs. And that's where I'm going to be putting it when I put it into a build video. So if you're wondering, should you buy this? You should buy this if you're going to spend somewhere in the $1,700 plus range for your machine. Now, if you're in the $1,200 to $1,500 range, you might consider the gold or the platinum version of this power supply. I will link to those in the description below to both Amazon and Newegg so that you can compare prices between the gold, the platinum, and the titanium. Each is about 2% difference in power efficiency. So 4 to 5% difference depending upon which voltage region you live in the world for the gold, and then 2 to 3% efficiency difference between the platinum and the titanium. The titanium, is top tier, top of the line, which is why it costs the most. So that's my general guidance of who should consider buying it. And of course, if you're building something under $1,000, then frankly, these are all overkill. Then the cheaper bronze units down in the $50 to $70 range is what I'd be looking at if you're building a, say, $600 to $800 machine. This is for machines that are over $1,000, the gold, platinum, and titanium. All right, we've done enough talking. Let's open this up and see what's inside a $170 power supply. Now, there will be timestamps in the description below, so if you have skipped forward to this point because you didn't want to listen to me prattle on, or perhaps you watched half of it, that's fine. If you're interested in my thoughts and positioning on this, then by all means go back and watch the beginning of the video, but hey, that's what timestamps are for, not everybody cares. This is heavy. I will say in terms of weight, I haven't weighed it. That's heavy. This is not a light power supply. And it's nicely shrink wrapped. Shiny box too. You can see the reflection of my lights over there on the box. It's even titanium colored. I'll put that in I actually have a trash can down there now. Very nice. Lots of features listed on the box. Extended hold time. It does have a 135 millimeter fluid dynamic bearing fan, so this should be utterly, absolutely silent. Carefully open it so I don't damage the box. I do keep all the boxes, both because eventually I either sell or give these away, or just because it gives me something nice to put on the desk behind me. Oh, that's nice. There's a hole right here for sliding it out. And it comes in a nice box of its own. I have said this on my channel many times in the past. Quality products tend to come in quality boxes. Cheap products tend to come in cheap boxes. Now, if it's a cheap product, that doesn't matter. Very rarely, there are exceptions, but very rarely will a company spend a lot of money on a fancy box to put a pile of junk in. And the fact is, look at that. It's got its logo printed right on the front. And it opens on the side just like so. Look at the presentation. This is nice. See if I can get it without the lights reflecting. There we go. That is nice. We've got a manual in a... This is the nicest package I have seen. Now, I've opened a lot of power supplies on my channel. This will be added to my full list of power supply reviews. This, it may seem minor. It may seem like, what's the big deal? It's a manual and it's some cable ties and a few other things. The fact that it comes in, this is thick plastic too. This is not cheap rip throwaway. It comes in a resealable Ziploc bag to safely store everything. We get Velcro reusable straps. And they got a little loop here and they've got the logo. So basically for cable management, you can use these for larger, thicker cables and they just Velcro so they're easy to reposition and reuse. For cables that maybe are smaller or you're sure that you want to fix them permanently, we have a nice selection of cable ties. Always nice to have extra cable ties. What else is in here? Oh, we've got screws. That's nice. We have our 4 case screws for screwing this into the back of our case. Now, many cases come with screws. And these are silver screws, and if you want to use black screws, for example, to match the back of your case, and your case comes with them, these are standard screws. So if your case comes with 4 power supply screws, these will be the exact same ones, but it comes with screws in case you need them. Oh, nice logo. Okay, some people care about this stuff and some people don't, but that's actually a nice looking sticker, and it's reflective, and that says Seasonic Prime. So if you're the kind of person who likes to have stickers on your case, if you just like to show off all the different brands that you have, if you don't want a big sticker, take a look at this. This is a metal sticker. It's got the 3M sticky tape on the back and it's raised, it's ridged. So if like on the front of your case, you just want to have one of these. Now these come from many companies, EVGA, Intel, other companies provide these things, but it's thick. It actually is not just a sticker, but that's actually, I don't know if it's metal or plastic, but it looks metallic. So you can put that in front of your case. I think it's cool. These are the kind of fun things you get when you spend a lot of money on a power supply. What else do we have here? I'm trying to take it out without bending it. And they've even got, I don't know if you can see that, if I can put it, here we go. It's got the Seasonic logo printed on the bag. Oh wow, that's a thick manual. That might be the thickest power supply manual I've ever seen. Notice the reflective foil on the manual. Okay, this is printed in like a million languages, so it's not really that thick. Fair enough. What else is there to say about a power supply? What is in here? Not much fancy. How to install it, basic spec information. It's a nice looking book though. This quick installation guide is probably what you should start with, and basically it shows you how to install a power supply. If you've never seen how to use one before, then it's basically shows you how it gets installed. Now, a couple of interesting things that they mention in here is they do talk about fan positioning, and they do talk about the modular cable system, which I'll show you in a minute. You only have to use the cables you need. If you have multiple graphics cards, or you have a graphics card that needs 2 8-pin PCI Express power connectors, one of the things that they mention in here is you might get better performance if you use 2 separate cables rather than the one cable that has 2 separate connectors, which I'll show you in a second, which is actually probably pretty good advice. Very nice. Now I'm just going to move all this aside so we can take this out. It's always fun opening nice products. And form-fitting foam. What is in here? Let's take this out first before we take out the, oh, that's heavy. So this box, which has their logo on it, actually looks very familiar. Why? I mentioned before in the video that Seasonic actually manufactures a lot of power supplies from other brands, which I won't mention here, but you know, if you've done any research on power supplies, you've come across that. And I've mentioned it in some of those videos. I want to open this without damaging it. It's very tight. There we go. In here, we have all the modular cables and the power, and that is a monster cable. That is a heavy gauge. That is a heavy gauge thick cable for high power draw. I've seen some power supplies come with thin cables, which if you pull everything the power supplies got, cables are only rated to so much amperage, voltage times watts. And if you pull too much power, you can melt cables. You are not going to melt that. Pardon the crackling, but it's in plastic. Put that aside over there. And they're flat, which I expected, but that's very nice. Let me open this up. Now the main ATX cable is not flat. There's too much in it to make it flat, but very nice, black. So these are completely black to the end. It's not black sleeved. They are black cables. Every single one of these is black. So if you don't want a bunch of ketchup and mustard colored cables in your computer, I would expect no less on a power supply of this quality. But it's good to know. So we have got, this end goes in the power supply, that goes in your motherboard. That's the 24-pin ATX connector. But the rest of the cables, cable management, these are, let me hold that up so you can see, completely, absolutely flat ribbons. So if you want to route these behind your motherboard tray or around the sides or edges of your system, they're flat and they'll fit into smaller spaces than just sleeved or braided cables will that are round and need a little bit of Z-depth, a little bit of thickness. Very nice. And of course, there is an entire collection of them here. Put that in my handy trash container. What do we have here? PCI Express connector. And another PCI Express connector. That's 2, 3, 4. That's the CPU connector. That's the other CPU connector. This is an important point. The new Intel i9s, some of them, and a few AMD motherboards, and probably most of the Threadripper, the 16-core AMDs, actually now require more than one 8-pin PCI Express power connector. In fact, when I did the build video, the Asus and the MSI top tier, even Ryzen 7 boards, want an 8-pin and a 4-pin CPU power connector. And then some of the i9 and Threadripper boards, I saw specifically the Gigabyte board, requires 2 8-pin CPU power connectors. If you're thinking of an i9 or a Threadripper system, you should definitely be on a top-tier power supply like this. I would never dream of putting either of those CPUs on anything less than something like this. So what else? First of all, now these here have these are single cables. So it's a 6 plus 2. So we have 1, 2, 3, we have 4 so far PCI Express power connectors. Now that would drive 2 1080 Ti's in SLI, which frankly, I don't particularly like SLI. It's not very well supported these days. A lot of games don't work in it. It's plenty. What is in this one? We'll go ahead and we're going to do a full unboxing here. See what else comes in here. We have got a serial ATA power cable. Again, flat ribbon, just like all the others. This end will go into the power supply. And then over here, we have 2 SATA power cables. Let's see how many of those total they gave us. Oh, interesting. Okay, so just one of these with 2 SATA connectors. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4 SATA connectors. And this one has 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is a total of 10 serial ATA power connectors on 3 different cables, which is handy because if you have, for example, solid state drives mounted on the bottom of your case and DVD drives or hard drives on the top, it gives you cables to run in different directions. They also provided us with 2 Molex power cables, and there is two 4-pin Molex. Now, you're probably not going to use these. I haven't used these in years, and this one has 1, 2, 3. So a total of 5 Molex connectors on 2 cables, 10 SATA connectors on 3, and 4 6 plus 2, they work either way, PCI Express connectors on 4 different cables so they can be run independently. One more cable, this is an adapter from the Molex connector to the old floppy connector. If you have a device that needs the small mini 4-pin connector for a floppy drive or something else that uses a floppy style connector, they provide an adapter for that. So that's all the cables. Very nice. Now, putting those out of the way, and of course a handy box to save them in, let's come to the main event, shall we? This looks very familiar, because I've seen this packaging before in non-Seasonic power supplies, but Seasonic makes those. Hint, 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 hint. This is I don't know if you call it velvet or velour or what this material is, but this is a nice drawstring bag to protect it, printed with their logo, and it feels nice and premium, as it should. How do we open this? There we go. We just pull the drawstring bag, and out it comes. This, by the way, is why the unboxing and overview is a separate video from the main review and installation. This is already pretty long as it is, so this is more of a fun, entertaining video as much as it is anything else. Don't worry, I'll cover it in detail in a future video. Very tight fit. No jokes. And the power supply, I'm pleased to report, is all silver and black with no colors on it. Some companies insist upon plastering their logo on their power supply, and it doesn't match the power supply. You know who you are. The information label is not too large, and it's also in silver and black, so basically it's not too obtrusive. Unfortunately, the most beautiful part of this power supply, you'll never see it again, which is kind of a shame. This is the bottom, the fan intake. This is where the 135 millimeter fluid dynamic bearing fan, that's a good thing, by the way, that's a quality fan. Look how pretty that is, Prime. Come on, Optimus Prime, impress us, although it's not Optimus Prime colors. They should make a special limited edition one just because it says Prime. You've got the silver here and the black, but you see, this you'll never see again because this will be mounted in your computer, most likely on the bottom of your computer where most high-end cases put them now. And so, you know, it's pretty, but you'll never see it again. And we've got the logo here, and we've got the Prime logo here. In fact, actually, there's protective covers, which I'll just take off now because I can. They're protecting the silver reflectiveness with little pieces of plastic. Take them off, don't take them off. These aren't going to be a thermal issue if you leave them on. There we go. See if I can get that shiny. There we go. Now on the back, this is the part that sticks out the back of your computer. You have your ATX cable here. I am pleased to see that we have a physical hard power switch. All high-end power, frankly, all power supplies should have one of these, but it has one if you need to kill the power and whatever. You also have a hybrid mode, which actually I don't know off the top of my head what that does yet. As I said, this isn't a full review. I will know what that does when we do the main review, but it has a hybrid mode switch, whatever that's for. Notice that it does not have a 110 or 220 voltage selector. That's because it auto detects and manages voltage. You can plug this into anything from 100 to 240 volts anywhere in the world with the proper power connector or power cable, and it will accept it and use it. So there's no way you can accidentally mess that up. Now the other end of the power supply is where the modular cables. This is where you plug all of these cables into, and it allows you to only use the cables that you actually need so you don't clutter up your system. Although be sure to save the other cables, you'll need them if you want to add anything to your system. So there's our 5 CPU. Yep, it looks like you can plug everything in. I was counting them to match up to the cables. Are there plugs for, I would imagine there are, but you never know. Yep, there's plugs for everything. So everything in here has a place. Very nice. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take this little sticker off here. I'm going to set it just like that. It is a very heavy power supply. Do keep that in mind. I've found with my premium top-end builds, they're very heavy when they're done. The Ryzen 7 1700 build I did, for example, in the tempered glass case, that thing weighs a ton. With the glass and the power supply and the drives and the motherboard and everything, the graphics cards, once you put it all together, it's not portable, which is why I'm glad it has a nice big handle at the top of it. But I'm looking forward to putting this into a system and showing you what it looks like in the actual installation process. It's a power supply, it's not very complicated. As I mentioned before, links to Amazon and Newegg for this, as well as the slightly lower rated versions, the gold and the platinum versions, which cost less. And if you're putting together a slightly less machine, might be worth considering. Those will be in the video description below. Check them out. I do see mail-in rebates and sales on these from time to time. In fact, the day I was filming this video, there was a mail-in rebate on this power supply. But of course those come and go, so I'm not going to mention the amounts or anything in a video, but do keep in mind that I have seen those come and go over time. Hopefully there's one available when you're watching this video. In any case, this has been the unboxing and overview of the 750 watt Seasonic 80 Plus titanium power supply. Like this video if you like it, share it with your friends if you loved it. Remember to subscribe to my channel with the big huge red button directly below this video. Questions and comments in the comment section. And as always, please check out my video description for the links to Amazon and Newegg. If you found this helpful and useful, please use those. I'd greatly appreciate it. Finally, if you like my videos in general and you'd like to consider supporting my channel, the link to Patreon is going to be down in the video description below. Patreon allows you to provide direct contributions on a monthly basis that let me provide you with all sorts of unboxing, overview, game performance videos, system builds, guides, videos, and other various tech tips. Please consider supporting if you are able to. And thank you to those of you who do. But if you're not, that's okay. Like, subscribe, comment, follow, share. That's all greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next video.